Hey, welcome to the challenge training. We're going to do lesson 21. So if you have access to all of your materials, either in person or on the learning portal, feel free to pull that up to follow along. I'm accessing everything through the learning portal through the digital teacher set. For challenge to start your lesson, what you'll need as far as materials is your manual, which is what we have in here. You'll need your vowel generalizations document, which is your rules for your vowels. You'll need your irregular sight syllables document. You'll need your spelling sound wall chart. You'll need either written out, printed out, or digitally displayed through the card deck app. You'll need your written materials for the lesson, so your words and everything. If you have your sight cards, your sight syllable cards and your sound cards, use those as well. If for some reason you don't have cards, you can write them out. And inside your manual, all of the information for those cards are also in your manual. So if you don't have them, but if you would like printable versions of those, they are also located in the remote learning section. You'll be able to find those word lists and cards. What you'll also need is a reading log. You can use your own version. You can write it on their tracking sheets, but you'll need this for their independent reading portion. That's one of the big changes in Challenge, which we'll explain a little bit later. What else in here? I think that's all that you'll need for the actual lesson. Of course, writing tools or dry erase boards, depending if you're doing the guided spelling or not. There's also multi-sensory items in here. Say, trace, and writes for extra practice that you can use. But today we're going to go straight through the lesson, and then we'll go back and talk about some of the components of it. For this lesson, we will be using list B. And just for new peeps, challenge comes with 3 lists. In beginning and extension, they have a list A and B. List A is for initial teaching, and then list B is for extra practice or reteaching the lesson. And challenge is a little different. Their lists are based on grade level. So list A is usually for 2nd grade students. List B is for 3rd grade. And list C is for 4th grade and up. So when you're determining what list to use in the lesson, it'll be based on those grade levels. Today we're going to go for 3rd grade because generally you'll be working with either 3rd grade or up in challenge. Now you may have a couple 2nd graders in challenge, but they might not necessarily need SIPs at that point if they're in challenge. But it's not necessarily a bad thing if you have some that test into challenge. But anyway, we're going to use list B. Let's first go into our manual. Gonna go to lesson, we're gonna go to lesson 21. It always starts off with a sight syllable phonics section. It says it's optional, and that's because depending on what age group you're using, they may already know these sounds. But I usually go through it regardless, especially for those sounds that have to do with long and short vowels, because some of the kids are still kind of learning the difference between an open and closed syllable. But I'm going to run right through this lesson, and then we'll come back and talk more about it. You guys will be my students, so feel free to come off of mute. Otherwise, you will hear me speak for the students. Hopefully that doesn't get confusing for you because you shouldn't be doing the lesson with them. you should just be doing the facilitation part. The only time you need to speak with them as far as responding to the answers is if it lists it in the manual or if they need extra help from or support for modeling, whatever section you're going over. All right, so for the start of our lesson, we are doing the single syllable phonics. To introduce the single syllable phonics, we're going to go from here. All right, so I introduce everything to my students first. You guys are going to wait for me. You're going to read together. You're going to respond together. And you're going to wait for my instruction. If you have to stop to go to redo it or go ahead, we'll have to start all over. So make sure you stay with me when we go through the lesson. All right, first things first, we're going to introduce 2 new sounds. We're going to pull up our wall card. These 2 new sounds will be under the mnemonic or the picture for tree, E as in tree. Both of these spelling sounds we're going to learn today are going to represent the E sound. Oh, hold on. Oh, there we go. This sound is E, as in tree. E. Sound. E. Again. E. This sound is E, as in tree. E. Sound. E. Again. E. Now we're going to review some of the sounds we learned from the previous lessons. First one, sound E. Again, E. Sound E. Again, E. Sound I. Again, I. Oh, I'm sorry. Give me 1 second. You guys can't see the lesson. Sorry about that. Sound W. Again, W. Sound Ah. Again, Ah. Sound again. Sound A. Again, A. Sound sh. Again, sh. Sound ch. Again, ch. Sound ah. Again, ah. I'm going to do a correction for this one. C. Again, C. This sound, excuse me. We're going to go to our sound card. Is as in cell. Sound, again, So we drop that into the incorrect. Sound, E. Again, E. Sound, again, At this point, I would document which ones they got wrong and which ones they got right. All right, next part of the lesson. All right, guys, we're going to read a mixed list of words. I'm going to pause, give you a chance to sound out any sounds or any words in your head, and then you're going to read them. I think we'll go with the hard words. Let's see how well you guys do with the hard ones. Ready? Read. Fleet. Gleam. Blame. Sheer. Shell. Crease. Steam. Ear. Wreath. Blem. I'm going to go back and do one for correction just so you guys can see that. Cress. This sound is E. E as in tree. Sound E. Again, E. Sound E. Read cree. Good. Now we're going to do morphemic transformations. I'm going to put the base word on the board. I'm going to have you read it. Then I'm going to add different parts to it, and I'll have you read the pieces and then the whole word. All right, first one. Read, differ. Smaller. Sorry, two screens is kind of a pain in the butt sometimes. There we go. Read, different. Actually, let's redo that one. Sorry about that. Read, differ. Read, ent. Whole word, different. Read, ently. Read, differently. Next one. Read, expect. Read, ed. Read, expected. Read, un. Read, unexpected. Read, leave. Read, unexpectedly. That was a good example of why you need your manual, because I had to go back and correct myself. FYI. All of that is listed in here. All right, the next section is sight syllables, introducing sight syllables. This one doesn't start off like a sentence like the other levels of SIPS does. We're going to pick our review. Take a couple from each area. All right, our new ones are here. Again, if you already have your cards available This stuff is on that card. Otherwise, it's inside your book for reference. This one is an irregular sight syllable. So when we're starting, guys, make sure you keep an eye on anything that's underlined. If you see an underlined sight syllable, that means it's irregular, and we'll talk about what those means. They usually will have some type of meaning or definition also. These. This word is ibble, like possible and collectible. This one is irregular because it's underlined. It's also a suffix in some words. Read, ibble, spell, I-B-L-E. Read, ibble, spell, I-B-L-E. Read, ibble. Our next word is able, like probable or able. Able or able. Like probable or preventable. Read, able. Spell A-B-L-E. Read, able. Spell A-B-L-E. Read, able. This is a suffix in some words. This one is ear, like engineer or volunteer. This is also a suffix in some words. Read, ear. Spell E-E-R. Read, ear. Spell E-E-R. Read, ear. This one is also irregular, just like able and ibble. Okay, let's review. Read, ject. Spell J-E-C-T. Read, ject. Give me a word example. Subject. Good. This one is irregular. Read, graph. Spell G-R-A-P-H. Read, graph. Give me an example. Photograph. Good. Read, miss. Spell M-I-S. Read, miss. Example, misread. Good. Read, ibble. Spell I-B-L-E. Read, ibble. Example, possible. Good. Read, con. Spell C-O-N. Read, con. Example, contact. Good. Read, prob. Spell P-R-O-B. Read, prob. Example, probably. Good job. Read, act. Spell A-C-T. Read, act. Example, activity. Good. It's good work. Read, eyes. Spell I-Z-E. Read, eyes. Example, realize. Good. Read, ear. Spell E-E-R. Read, ear. Give me an example. Volunteer. Good one. Read, vide. This syllable is vid, like video. Read, vid. Spell V-I-D. Read, vid. Spell V-I-D. Read, vid. Readable. Spell A-B-L-E. Readable. Example, preventable. Good. Read, vid. Spell V-I-D. Read, vid. Example, video. Good. That one also kept track. I got that one wrong once, and then we went back and they got it right the second time. All right, now we're going to read by syllables. For this one, I'm going to write the first syllable, have you read it, add the second syllable, have you read the second syllable, and then we'll try for the real word. All right. First syllable, D. Second syllable, gree. Read the whole word, degree. I normally frame these with my hands or with a marker when I'm doing these, or as I'm writing, just depending on how you're doing this part. Read, viz. Second syllable, I. Last syllable, bull. Real word, visible. Good. First, prob. Second, a. Third, bull. Whole word, probable. First syllable, in. Next syllable, deed. Real word, indeed. First syllable, ah. Second syllable, pa. Let's review this one. Where is the vowel? Is it at the end or is it not at the end? It's at the end. One vowel at the end is long. This vowel, long or short? Long. Long O sound, O. Read, po. Read, sight. Real word, opposite. Now they may say opposite if they're not familiar with the word, they may be, but you can correct them and give them the right reading of that word. This word is opposite. Read, be. Read, ver. Real word, beaver. Read, mm. Oh, is it locked? Sorry. Too big. Let's make this smaller so I can read it. Thought that was weird that it was just an in there. Okay, let's try this again. Read, in. Read, struck. Read, shuns. Real word, instructions. Good. Read, east. Read, earn. Real word, eastern. Read, dis. Read, ease. Real word, disease. Read, in. Read, crease. Real word, increase. Let's go back to this one. Read in. Oops. Read struck. Is this irregular? We'll check our irregular sight syllables. Yes. Read, shun. Real word, instruction. All right, for our next section, guys, we're going to be reading entire words. So we're going to take our syllables and read the entire word. I will be asking you if some of them have irregular sight syllables at the end, which we'll need our sight syllable list for, which we should have on the table. But we're going to break these down into how many syllables are in the word. Okay, let's start this part. Okay. All right, first question. Do we have any irregular sight syllables in this word at the end of this word? No. Thank you. No. And of course, you'll have that on the table for you, so you'll be able to know. They don't have to guess that one. All right, we're going to split it. How many consonants are between the two vowels? There are two vowels. How many consonants? For this one, there's only one. Where are we going to split it? This one, they may guess. They may say after the P. They may say after the A. But the rule is to try before and then try after. So where are we going to split it? Try before. All right, so we put our dot here. First syllable, che. Second syllable, pull. Let's try after. First syllable, chap. Second syllable, ol. Read, chapel. That's our word. All right, next one. Do you see an irregular sight syllable? Yes. Right here at the end. Sound, pull. Where are we going to split? Between the two consonants. First syllable, sound. Second syllable, pull. Real word, sample. All right, here's a big one. This one has multiple syllables in it. So my first question is there an irregular sight syllable? Let's check our list. Yes. Right there. Sound, lee. We're gonna split here for that one, because that's our vowel sound. How many vowels do we have here between the two vowels? Or excuse me, how many syllables do we have, or consonants do we have between the two vowels? Sorry. We have 3. Where are we going to split? Between the N and the S. Only because this is one sound. First syllable, con. Second syllable, stant. Last syllable, lee. Real word, constantly. Would. All right, next word. Do we have an irregular sight syllable? No. All right, looking at our two vowel sounds, where are we going to split? Try before. Let's try before. First syllable, re. Second syllable, tire. Does that sound like a word you would hear? Sounds like a word I would hear. That's our word, retire. Next one. Do we have an irregular sight syllable at the end? No, we do not. Our vowel sounds. How many consonants do we have between the two vowels? 2, but we're going to split in between. For this one, how many consonants do we have in between the two vowels? 1. Where are we going to split? Try before. We're going to try before. All right, first one, cause. Second one, me. Last one, ticks. Try the real word, cosmetics. Let's try after for this one and see if it changes the word. First syllable, cause. Second syllable, met. Last syllable, ix. Real word, cosmetics. Now that word means makeup. All right, let's go to I think that was our last one, actually. Yep, that's our last one. Good job. Let's go to our next section. Which is guided spelling. So for this one, we'll take out our writing utensils. And for this, you can either use paper, dry erase board. I believe they might have printables for this as well in the lesson information. Do they have it in? Nope, they have it in the other one. Let's see. Support families. Oh, maybe not for lesson 21. So I think after maybe lesson 15, they might stop using the printed ones only because they get bigger. And at that point, they should be able to write it out themselves. So I guess you don't necessarily need them. But they do have printable ones for the early lessons where you can use the sheets. But for this one, we're just going to use, we're just going to write directly on the screen for this one. So I'll make this full screen for you guys. Okay, and so if you were with me yesterday for the guided spelling, I mentioned that in guided spelling, you definitely want to use your manual because they provide supports. This is the support I was talking about. So I'm going to run through this so you guys understand what we're doing. Guided spelling is similar in challenge as it is in the other ones, but we'll start the lesson. Normally the kids don't see the words right off the bat, but I'm just going to use it for purposes here. Got a writing utensil. Okay, number your paper from 1 to 5. We're going to do all of them, even though the last 2 are optional. For number 1, It is empty. Empty the trash before you go to bed. Say empty. Empty. Say empty by syllables. Empty. Hold on a second. I'm trying to figure out why this list is different from the other one. Hold on. Oh, that's why, because I'm on the wrong list. Another reason why we have our manual. List A has empty, list B has president. So we're going to go to list B. Sorry about that. President. We have a new president. Say president. President. Say president by syllables. President. All right, for number 1, be careful because pres, the Z sound in pres is spelled with an S. For I, or for president, because that is a schwa, for the sound you're hearing in president, it's spelled with an I. This is a schwa, so use the I spelling for that. Go ahead and write president. Where did you write? President. Spell President. All right, check your work. Make sure you count that schwa spelling and the spelling for the Z sound in president. All right, number 2. Single. I didn't pass a single door before running to class. You can pick a random sentence as long as it makes sense. Say single. Single. Say single by syllables. Single. All right, for goal in single, is this an irregular sight syllable? And this is where we would bring up our, hold on, I gotta take this out. Bring up our irregular sight syllable list. And it's one of our sight syllables. Good job. Oh, lost my spot. So for goal, we're going to use that spelling. All right, go ahead and write single. All right, what word do we write? Single. Spell SINGLE. Single. Check your work. Make sure you double check that spelling for goal. Do you have a question? Kelly?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay, number 3. Interest. See a good sentence for that. What interest do you have in dogs? Say interest. Interest. Say interest by syllable. Interest. We do have one irregular sight syllable for but the spelling for that, we're going to go to our spelling sound card. We're going to use number 1 for the sound. All right, go ahead and write interest. What word do we spell? Interest. Spell I N ter T E R S E S T. Check your work. Make sure you use the first spelling of for the part. Okay. I usually do 4 and 5, but you can gauge your time to see if you have enough time to do that. At the end, you have them turn in their papers or clean up their dry erase boards, however you want to do it. So all of these. All right, next part of the lesson is fluency practice. Now, this one, they don't give you a story like they do in extension and in beginning. For this one, you're supposed to provide the students with an independent reading experience. Now, I would suggest using your RAS Plus if you have access to it, especially if they have their logins. If you have access to the tablets and whatnot, go ahead and use their logins. Let them do independent reading there. If you don't, you can give them books, or you can find passages. You can also print books from RAS Plus, but they should be receiving, 15 to 30 minutes of independent reading. That's where your fluency log or your reading log comes in. They're keeping track of what books they're reading during the time period, what books they read, what pages they read. So if there's a book that they're continuing through that's a chapter book, this would be a good way to track that as well. So if you have kids that have their own binders with stuff that they use on a daily, this would be a good thing to add into that. While they're doing their reading, perfect time for you to write down any notes you have in their tracking sheets about how well they did in the lesson. Keep in mind, general lesson passing is about 80% knowledge. So if they got 80% of the lesson, then you can move on to the next one. If they struggled in majority of these sections, they may need to do a repeat of that lesson, or at least a repeat of the skills in that lesson. So that might mean extra practice on sight syllables, or extra practice on transformations, or extra practice on reading words and reading syllables. Any questions about this before I go through the parts of the lesson? Okay, great. Let me pull up our manual and we'll go back through and look at some of these routines. Again, all of this stuff is inside the learning portal, even to the videos of the different routines. All of those are listed in here. The one thing I do want to point out, because this one may pop up multiple times throughout challenge, is the introduction of the schwa. That's kind of hard to explain on its own, but they do have inside the learning portal materials on how to explain that. If you go into the teacher learning system, go into SIPS, challenges here. Oh, Lordy, hold on. Understanding the schwa. So it's got some literature on what a schwa is and explains it. There's also a video in here from lesson 40 that goes over the schwa and the schwa correction. And there's also one for 35 if you're using 5th edition. But if you also need more additional help on that as well, I have a video that I found that I sent out a while ago that seems to help quite a few people and how to explain the schwa concept to students. But it's literally just a stressed and unstressed syllable in a word. I think the word we used earlier was president. We say president, even though that sound in the middle is it even though that letter in the middle is an I, it's been given the sound. That would be the unstressed syllable. And so pointing that out to students that even though that says the sound, it's spelled with an I, is pretty much explaining them what a schwa is. So it's the difference between a stressed and unstressed syllable, which you'll see a lot in those polysyllabic words. All right, so let's get back into the manual and go back through this lesson. Okay, starting off in the section on sight syllable phonics. This one's pretty self-explanatory. You pretty much do it the same way as you would do the phonics sounds that are in beginning and extension. Again, you're using your cards or you're writing it on a dry erase board, but you want to make sure you always have that sight, not sight, the spelling sound card available with you when you're doing this section. That particular technique is not, or excuse me, routine is not crazy. The main thing you just want to remember is when you hit to the review section, you're taking about, I don't know, 10 to 15 of those previous sounds and shuffling them. Don't give them to them in the same order because they'll start to remember the order. Shuffle those up. And then if for some reason you have to do a correction, they do provide correction information in here. So make sure you're following this routine for correction. Don't say, oh, you know what this word is, or try again, try your best. Like none of that is necessary. When you have to make a correction, you want to do it quickly. Don't delay it. Give it to it immediately and give it to them immediately and then return whatever sound or sight syllable or word that they have back into the deck so they can practice it again. Wall card correction, that's anytime they mess up one of the sounds. That's what this is for. Consonant, digraph, and consonant corrections. So if for some reason it's one of those multi-letter sounds, you just want to give them that sound and then have them practice it, sound it twice. And then add it back into the deck. For this one, the sounds of C, the sound C makes next to a vowel. These will also, you'll have to go back in, point out the letter following the C. Is there an E, I, or Y there after the C, and then sound of the C? And then have them do it again. If you're unsure about the sound for those, you can go back and find that card for that. I do not see it on this particular wall card, unless I'm mistaken. No, it's not on this wall card. but you should be able to go back to that card and get the explanation of those sounds. I believe it is in chapter, we can go and look at this. Great thing about the manual is that it has all the fun stuff in it that you need to figure out all of these things. I don't think that. If you go into the appendix, you can go to the scope and sequence, and it'll bring up the scope and sequence for all of the lessons. So you'll know in advance exactly what you're studying, but it'll tell you lesson 13 is where you'll get the explanation for those sounds. So if we go to lesson 13, if you're unsure how to do it, the breakdown is here. And then they have you write this on the board. They give you the practice of the word. So this one will be said, sit, and sigh. I think I might have messed that one up earlier. Now that I think about it. Because this one is city, sent, and cycle. But when you're dealing with A, O, and U, those are going to be cat, cost, and cut. So if they're struggling with that particular one, you may have to do this preparation part again with them just to get them practicing the sounds that C makes with those vowel sounds. So if it's an E, R, I, or Y, it's going to make the S sound. The C is going to make the S sound. If the if it's an A, O, or U, then you guys are going to make the K sound for C. So make sure you do that correction as needed. Let's see. Reading a mixed list. You can decide, or you can have the kids decide on which list you're going to use. Make sure you let them know for parts of these that some of them are actual words and some of them are syllables. You'll notice that when they get to these, sometimes they'll try to make them into words that they're not. But I have to remind them, these are not actual words. These are pieces of words. So they're not going to always make the same sound as that word spelling would make. Because some of them, even though they're syllables, they make up real words. But they don't always sound the same if you're going with the syllable rules. So you kind of have to remind them about that. For corrections, it's the wall card chart again. Consonant blends, giving them that sound. The correction for Y at the end, you're asking them how many syllables are in the word. So for Y, if it's a one syllable word like fly, cry, try, that Y at the end of the word makes the I sound. If it's a multi-syllable word, it like funny or happily, the sound at the end of a word with a Y will make the E sound. So make sure you're giving that direction, which is also on the sound card, I believe. That one is on the sound card. Oh, where'd it go? I'll just pull it up again. Yeah, this one is on the sound card, I believe. So you'll be able to show them if that's the short one and that's the long one. The way they represent it for SIPs is a really long line or a short line, and that's supposed to represent the syllable differences. So make sure to point that out if they're having issues with that one. Again, same same sound practices with the C. And again, I did make that mistake earlier. You're supposed to be giving the sound of the C when you see these, not the sound of the vowel. So this will be s for these. Final E correction. You're just asking them, is there an E at the end? So blame is a good example. So if they say blam instead of blame, you ask them, is there an E at the end? You ask them if this one is long, if this sound is long or short, because there's an E at the end, it would be long. And then you ask them the sound, long A, read, blame. That's how you would do that correction. Morphemic transformations. The only thing you kind of have to remember about these is that one, they're going to read each part and then read the whole word. So for this particular one, for differ, we did differ, then we do int, and then we just keep adding it each time. So differ, int, different, differently. Each time you're going to give them that piece and have them go through it, which it says in the instructions. Give them a sentence. For introducing the sight syllables, again, you want to make sure you're pointing out whether they're irregular or not. The routine is slightly different for irregular and regular syllables. Zoom in a bit so you guys can see that. So the regular ones are the ones that are not underlined. All of these for this lesson were underlined, but if they weren't underlined, you would just read the syllable and examples. If there's a definition, give the definition, and then read with definition, add meaning. Read, insert word, definition, insert definition, and then add the meaning, and they give you the meaning of the word. For a regular, read the syllable and give the example. Tell the students the syllable is irregular, especially for introducing because they don't always know. If there's a definition, give the definition, and then have them read, spell, read like you would do a regular sight syllable, like a regular sight word. Give them a definition if they have one, to add the meaning. For these ones that we did today, none of them had definitions. But again, if you're in the different lessons, this is a good reason to have the cards, or to make your own flashcards for these, because some of them, when you go to do review, if you don't have the definition in front of you, you might not remember them. I wonder if, let's see. I wonder if the scope and sequence has the definition. I don't think it does. No, it doesn't. Okay, so yeah, you would have to go back into the lesson. Your best bet is to write them down. If you're working on them, you should have them posted anywhere, anyway, somewhere, and you should have them written down. That way you know them. You're also welcome to take the list and write them out somewhere just for your own knowledge. But if you're handing a mentor this information or a volunteer this information, they don't know the definitions. They're doing review of these different sight syllables. They're not going to be able to tell the kid that this definition exists for this. So make sure you have that written down somewhere for those lessons, what the definitions are for that. And if you're not sure what they are, you can use the scope and sequence and go back and look for the ones that have the definitions. That might be a little bit of work, but it's, if you do it, start it like a spreadsheet or something in advance, you'll already have those available. Miss was a good one because the meaning is wrong. That's what we had earlier, and it wasn't, because it wasn't in our review space or on this sheet or on that list, we wouldn't have known to use that definition. The root word for vid is C, so there's another definition. So how we would do that is read vid, spell VID, read vid, example video, meaning see. If for some reason they get the definition wrong, you just give them the right one. All right, go back through. Again, pay attention to your list when you're doing these. I did have one coordinator that would do all three of them just because they wanted to make sure their students had all of those words learned. What you could do, the only issue is when you go to take that mastery test at the end, it does it by list. So you may need to either adjust that or to prevent from giving them all three tests, just pick one. And the other ones can just be for practice. But go based on the grade as far as testing. So if you're going to do third grade, you should be doing list B and testing them on list B when it comes to the mastery or progress report test. For correction, where's the vowel is a really good one. That's for how they say the word. They ask them if the vowel is at the end or not at the end, using those vowel generalization rules, which are these. So if for some reason they mispronounce the sight syllable and one of these rules apply, you would just give it to them in that situation. You would ask them, where's the vowel? Long or short, point to the vowel, have them sound it. Point to the left, have them read. And if there's a definition, you have them do the definition. I think miss is a good example of that. Irregular sight syllables, we just went over that. If they, for some reason, need a correction on that, you would tell them what the syllable is, just like you would do for a sight word, and then have them read, spell, read it. If there's a definition, have them give you the meaning. If they don't know it, give it to them again, and then add it back into the review. Next section for the reading syllables. This one was pretty easy. You write in the first syllable, have them read it, add the second syllable, have them read the second syllable, and then have them read the whole word. Try for the real word. Pretty easy. Just pay attention to the syllables because they may say the syllable one way and it might not be the way the word is said. A good example of that is possible. For possible, I'll write it out for you. So for possible, excuse my handwriting, it's hard to write with the mouth. Okay, so for possible, if we're breaking this up into syllables, it's going to sound different. First of all, we've got our two vowel sounds. So we split it here, divide between the two consonants. But we also have another sound here with bull. Bull is an irregular sight syllable, so that would be its own separation. So you would split here for this one. The way we would say this syllable in the middle, this S-I, if we're following the generalization rules, because this I is at the end of the syllable, this would be psi. But the word is not possible, right? It's possible. So you would have to, if for some reason they pronounced this part wrong when they gave the word back, you would have to go back to that irregular sight syllable and point this out and then have them do this part again. A whole word correction you would have to worry about would be, an example would be a schwa. If they mispronounce the word when it came to the schwa because of the spelling. And what you would do for that is give them the word, use it in a sentence, and have them read it. Frame the stressed and unstressed syllable. And let me get this thing back up here and I can show you an example of that. So I think salad is a good one. I think our schwa, which is here. That's where our schwa is. Yep. So what you would do for this one, read the word. This word is salad. Read salad. Frame the stressed syllable or the accented syllable. That's this one. And another way I tell them about this one is to like not yell the word, but say the word out loud and listen to the one that sounds the loudest. What's the sound that's said the loudest? So in salad, be salad. The loudest one would be the syllable. That would be your stressed one. This particular vowel is the loudest vowel. The unstressed, that's this. This one changes to the sound, which is what you would tell them. This changes to the sound. What do we call that? A schwa. Point to the left of the word, read salad. So that one's a little weird one. It's a little harder to remember because you don't run into those all the time, but that's the process for correcting the schwa. What do you do when the vowel generalizations don't work? So that's the vowel at the end, vowel not at the end example. What's an example of one that doesn't work? Let's see. This word, iron, is a good one because that sound doesn't say Ron. So let's use that one as an example. The word isn't iron, so that would be a good one to explain to the kids. So for this one, we're looking at what to do if the correction doesn't work. The word is iron. I ironed my clothes this morning, or my armor is made of iron. That's a good one to use for a singular word. Read iron. Point to the spelling that doesn't have the right sound. The spelling that doesn't have the right sound is here. It doesn't say iron. It says iron. So for this changed to what sound? Is, and this is irregular in the word. Point to the left of the word. Read iron. So you may have weird words like that. That's how you would correct it if the vowel generalizations don't work. Irregular spelling, that's similar to the issue where we would have either irregular sight syllable or something like that. The irregular spelling one, I guess that would also be a good irregular spelling, the one I just used. It's not spelled the way it sounds, so it doesn't make sense to the kids. Also, definite is a great one. Definite is a great one for an irregular spelling. Oops. Perfect example. So for this one, it really doesn't matter how you chop it as far as the syllables. Because there's an E here, this should say night. It should say definite. But because of the English language, we have an irregular spelling here. So we would have to explain to the students, based on the correction, the word is definite. Use the word in a sentence. There's a definite end to this war. Definite. Read definite. And then point to the spelling that doesn't have the right sound. That will be this. This changed to what sound? It. It is irregular in this word. The I is irregular in this word. Point to the left of the word, read definite. That's how you would do that one. Reading entire words. So for this one, remember to pause before you say read for each syllable. And for the whole word, just remind the students that the pause is time for them to think about the word silence and silently read the word before they actually read it to you. So you start this one out with asking if there's an irregular sight syllable at the end of the word. Again, you're supposed to have that sheet available right there on the table for them. That way they can look, they don't have to guess. If it is, point it out, underline it for them so they know. And then you go through each syllable. One, for each syllable word, point to the vowels. And I think a good example for the one, I did this one earlier, but let's do struggle this time. We did chapel for the first one. Let's do struggle. So you're already up front asking them if there's an irregular sight syllable. They already pointed it out. We're underlining it for them. We're looking for our vowels, our vowel sounds. You already know that this one will provide a vowel sound for them. And so we're asking them now, how many consonants are between the two vowel sounds? It would be, technically it's 3, but it would be 2, because this is one sound. And we would split it there. We'd ask them divide where. They would say in between the 2 consonants or in between. And we would mark it there. And then for first syllable, read, strug. Last syllable, goal. Real word, struggle. And that's how you would go through this whole section. Pretty easy. They have the same similar corrections that we have throughout the lesson. So if you're looking at where's the vowel, if for some reason they messed up strug and said strug, you would have to ask them, where's the vowel? Not at the end, long or short. Short U sound, read, strug. And you would do that for any of the ones where it's a long or short vowel issue. And you would include that vowel generalization, which is right here. You would include that vowel generalization anytime you do that correction. Irregular sight syllable correction for reading syllables, point to the syllable. This syllable is read. Start over by framing and having the student reread each syllable before continuing on. And so you would just go back to that sight syllable list, find it, point it out, give them that sound as if you were showing them a sight word. And then revert back to the page where you're going over that specific word. Now, if there's an issue with the whole word, like if they break it down just fine, but then when they go to read the word, there's an issue, it could be a schwa correction. We just saw that earlier. Correction when vowel generalizations don't work. It's literally the same correction types. You'll be doing those throughout the whole lesson. Irregular spelling correction. The new one is the VCV pattern correction. So for this one, this is where I was telling you in the previous lesson, try before, try after. That's what this VCV correction is. So a word like, let's see what example we have up here. A word like, Retire. That was a good one. Retire is a good one. There we go. So write out retire. And so let's talk about what they mean by VCVC, vowel, consonant, vowel. So let's get a different color for that. Vowel, consonant, vowel. That's our VCVC. So the correction for this would be, say they said retire, retire, or retire, or something like that. And it didn't sound right based on where you separated it. For this one, we would say, one, does that word make sense? Retire, retire. They'd be like, that doesn't sound right. Most of the time, they've heard some of these words already. And so they're able to recognize that it doesn't sound like the word they know, or they're just unsure completely. So for this, you would add your dot. It says, first, try before. Read, read. Second one, tire. Let's try the other one. First one, ret. Second one, ire. Which one makes sense? Retire. And then you have the whole entire word. So then you would go back and have to redo that whole word. Try here, read, re. Next one, tire. Real word, retire. Good. Go back and do that correction. All right, guided spelling. There are usually notes in here. Just be careful of pronunciation. From region to region. Careful about schwas. Provide guidance for those. But this one is pretty easy. It's the same process for the decodable words process that we have in the earlier levels. Give them a sentence, say the word, and have them do it in syllables for this one. So just breaking down the words into sounds, just like you would do for decodable. Again, remember to pay attention to the support. You do need this. Do not skip it. Always provide that support. Some of them don't have it, like Matter and Jungle, you won't need it. But the ones that do have it, please use it. And again, make sure you're using the correct list when you go through these. Any questions about challenge, or does anybody need me to go through any of the specific routines for challenge? Is everybody good? Okay, I hear nothing, so I'm going to take that as a no. Well, that is the gist of the challenge training. There's not, the lessons really don't take that long. These are about 15, 20 minutes max. And that's not including the reading part, because that part does end up being independent reading. So, although it's listed in the lesson, technically it's not the SIPS part, but don't skip that either. Make sure they're getting that independent reading. The more opportunities that they have to engage in the materials, the better. The more often they see words in print and stuff like that, the better. So make sure that they're being given the opportunity to do independent reading, and make sure you're giving them books that are either on their level, slightly below their level. And if you're using RAS, they have a few that are slightly above their level just for practice. So make sure you're not giving them books that are too easy for them or too hard during independent practice. I know that for the most part they get to choose, but if you're doing using your own library, make sure you're doing like level books or something like that. And then the other option again would be to go into RAS. You can select books based on whatever level they're on. The easiest way to do that, I can show you that really quick before I let you guys go. Oops, that's not the right password. So when you go into the roster for your students, all of them should have a level under their RAS plus. Let me move this out of the way. All of them have a level. Like this particular student is level F. So you'll be able to go in if you're printing books, because some people are having issues with tablets. I'm fully aware of that. You're able to go into the activities, go back to the main page where your dashboard is. You can find books by grade level, or by Lexile or by Learning A to Z. That particular kit was an F. So you can find books under F. Let's do Animal Dads. You can assign this book to them. That way, when they get home, they can access this. But then you can also print this out. You can print out a couple copies to keep it on your shelf or your library, or just to provide for a specific group. You can print out a couple for independent reading. Great idea would be to go for whatever theme you're using that month. Pull those books. If it's winter, pull a bunch of winter books that are on level F. If it's Earth Day, pull a bunch of Earth Day books from level F. You can even do a couple levels before or a couple levels after, just as I said before. So all this stuff is printable. You're able to find these examples to go along with that. So you can use those for independent reading. You can use whatever books you have on your shelf. Or you can let them log in and use their student view and look at their library books from there. Those are your options for that. But also document. Any progress you have with the kids, any reading they're doing, make sure you're writing it down, because if you don't write it down, it didn't happen. That's the best way to tell you. If you don't write it down, it did not happen. And if you are to leave or someone comes to audit, there won't be a list of progress for a student if you don't write it down somewhere that people can go back and access. So make sure you're logging everything, progress, how well they're doing in the lessons, if they're missing sounds often, if they're having a hard time with the routine, if their behavior is crazy, if they didn't finish your lesson. All of that stuff should be documented. That way, when you you do your reporting for this kid, and also when you go to do your lesson planning, because then you'll know what happened the previous lesson, or if they need to move forward or stop. See if there's anything else I needed to show you. Maybe the assessments. This will be the last thing I showed you. It's the assessments. So for this one, you've got progress tracking sheets, just like we had for the beginning lessons. You can use these to track group information or individual information per lesson. And you can use these as your tracking sheets for SIPs if you want to. You don't have to. But the progress assessments, first of all, you pay attention to your placement test, because K through third has one, and then fourth through 12th have a different one. So pay attention to that. And then when you go to do your mastery tests or your progress assessments, that's what they call them for a challenge. It's no longer called a mastery test. It's called a progress assessment. Make sure you're doing the right one, because it goes by the list. I mentioned this earlier. We were using list B earlier for our third graders. So we would scroll down and find the progress assessments for list B. And these will match the sounds, sight syllables, all that stuff. It'll match what they've been learning in those two areas, or in that area for list B. So make sure you're using the correct ones so you're testing them. You're not giving them a test on something they didn't practice. these run a little differently, and I'll go into how these work, although the instructions are on the paper. I'll go into more what these look like when I do the mastery test and placement test training. It's a 20-minute video that'll pop up later that you can go back and reference, and it'll break down how to do all these mastery tests, how to do a placement test, so you'll understand how to work that and how to place students afterwards. Um, okay, I think that's all for the good of the cause. Again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask me now, ask me in the next training, or there's also an open session training where you can ask any question you need, or if you need a walkthrough for anything, you can pop into that one later on today and get a walkthrough for any of the questions you might have or scenarios you might have. But I think that's the gist of it. If you need additional training for challenge, you can hit me up, or you can go in here and use the learning portal resources that I mentioned earlier. If you go into professional learning and go into teacher systems, pretty much this whole training that I created is based on all of the stuff that they already have. But you can go in here and go through each level, instruction routines, assessment decisions, all of that stuff can be found in here. And specifically for challenge, basic concepts and challenge, how to deal with the fifth edition if you have that one, the schwa information, the difference between syllabic transformation and morphemic transformation, selecting which letter word list you're going to use, and then those different routines for reading syllables and entire words. So all of that stuff is available. There's plenty of videos and getting started guides and all of that in here. If you need help navigating through this as well, I am available to help for that as well. But enjoy the rest of your day. I will see you on the next training. Bye.